So now that I have that, I can then go ahead to see to render my, of course don't forget that I have created the contact.html. So now that I have registered the URL inside the project, and in here I've defined that when the user navigate to the contact us default URL, then bring them to this contact us. So let me just come to the view and render. So I then come to the view and render the return render. Return render. I'm going to be rendering the request, and what I want to render is this particular template. Is this particular template, which is the contact.html. So don't forget that I've put it inside contact us file folder. Then I then go the way of contact.html. So if I save now and I start my application using python manage.py from server, of course I then open my browser, and if I refresh now, of course don't forget that I have that as contact us. Now I'm getting the error template does not exist, which is what I want us to troubleshoot together. Now if you look at it, of course I told you that little things matter here in our programming proficiencies. When we are working on our programming stuff, anytime you're coding, then you should know that little things matters. Now if you look at it, I actually, instead of naming these templates, I put template. So you should rename it to template. Don't forget that we are using framework where everything has been predefined for us. And once everything has been predefined for us, then you should use it exactly the way the framework has instructed you to use it. That is very, very important for you to pay attention to. You can see that it has changed now to Django. So what I would then do is I would then stop my application and then restart again. So I will open the browser and I refresh. Now you can see that we have our form rendered. So if I click on submit, you will notice something in here that I have the URL, but before clicking on, if I delete this now, if I delete this, so I have the form rendered, but when I click on submit, then it's now have another URL parameter, which is the full name, but because I did not enter anything in here, then it is giving me an empty value. So if I enter this, I enter my name in here, and I click on submit, you see that I have the full name, which is the key, and I also have the value to be Timmy, and which is the value. So if I go to the inspect elements, let's see something else. So I go to the network, so I click on submit again. You see that I have a request in here that say contact us, the local URL, localhost URL with the contact us URL and the value, which is this template router. So if I click on it, you can see that I have, let me try to zoom in a bit, or I can make this to go this side. Okay, I think this is better now. So if you look at it, you notice that we have the URL and the request method is get and the status code is 200. So but what I want us to pay attention to the fact that the method is get. Now there are majorly two methods that you possibly work. Of course, in programming we have three things possible. Is that you create, you request, you update, or you delete. But now when you are doing that, you have two methods in our form, which is either to get or to post. And you can see in here that for our form, for our form, you see that we do not define any parameter, meaning that by default the method is set to get, and get is anytime you want to get information resources from the server, and post is when you want to send something, you want to give in information into the server, and that, as the name implies, so that is get in action. So get by default we get resources from your server, and adding these extra parameters into the URL. Now let's now look at the other method, which is the post method. Now don't forget that to define the method of the form, you add method to the form parameter, and you, of course, the default is get. The default is get, which is what we have seen in action. Now let's say we want to post, we want to pass resources into the to the server. Then instead of you to use get, you use post. Instead of you to use get, you use post. Now if you save it, then you come back to your, and you refresh, let's refresh and delete this URL. So now that we have that, let us now go ahead to submit, and now we have an error. We have an error, which is that the CSRF verification failed. And now when we talk about CSRF verification, CSRF stand for cross-site request forgery. Cross-site request forgery attack. The innocent end user can be tricked by the hackers to submit web requests that they did not want to submit, and this can be done, for example, by embedding the malicious request into the website that they associated, that the user visits, and when the user browser automatically include any credentials associated with the site, then the user, such as the user session cookie. Therefore, if the user is currently authenticated to the site, then the site will have no way to distinguish between if it's a legitimate user request or if it's a fraud. So in order to stop these CSRF attacks, then the developers can use the anti-CSRF tokens, so which is always unique to the user section and the request, and these tokens are checked and validated on the server, and since the attacker cannot guess this token, then it prevents the attack from succeeding. So anytime you are working with a Django application, you should always set your, because it's a post request, you should always set your cross-site request forgery. And to set that cross-site request forgery CSRF token, then you need to do this CSRF token. So once you set this, then there will be a unique token for each user session, so that even if they send a request from a malicious, from if a malicious user or an attacker send a request using the user details, then since the token cannot be guessed, since the token is different, then the user will not be able to gain access to it. Click on submit now. You see that there is no error again. Of course, if you come and check your request in the network tab, you see that the method is now post. The method is now post. Of course, there are other parameters, the preview, the response, the shadow, and the like. So this tab is very useful when you are working with APIs. When you are working with APIs, very useful. Now that we have seen that in action, let us now go to our views. Let us now go to our views and write our function to undo both get and post requests. So we come to our views. Of course, this is where I get the view from the contact application, the views inside the contact application. So now in here we are going to check if, let's just say, if the request, of course this is a form request, so if the request method is post, of course it's either get or post. So if it is getting, that means the user is navigating to the URL at that point, so that means we should render the the form for the user to see. And if it is post, that means the user has navigated to the URL and they have entered the details, and now they are submitting for them for the information to be processed by the server. So we can then check that, okay, if at the point when the user is submitting the request, that means the method is post, then let's get the details of the form, which is the full name, and the full name. To get it, of course, this post request come with a dictionary, and this dictionary is just the key value pair of the form, and the key is the name of the input. You can see that inside this contactors we have the name to be full name. If you define another input to be maybe password and you give it the name of password, then that is the same thing that it's going to be coming with in this dictionary of the post. So now to get that, you just go the way of request and get from the request you get the posts, and this post come with the dictionary like I said. And if you want to access a particular value of the dictionary, then you use the key or the name of the input feed, and to use that to get the full name, don't forget we just have one input feed in our form, and which is the full name. Note that this name must be the same with whatever that you call it here. With whatever that you call it here, it must be exactly the same. So now that we have that, let us now print. Let's just print the full name that the user enter. Let's just print it in our console, and once we have that, we can then do another thing, maybe navigate the user to another page to show them that this form has been successfully submitted. So we can just redirect the user for now. But let's see, of course, you should always test your code on the go so that you know when you are stuck and you know what is making you to be stuck. Now let's see that in action if you are going to be getting the full name with this particular details. And later, once we are getting it, we can then validate. Of course, before you redirect, you should validate that the user has entered the right thing. You should validate if the user have entered the right thing, and once you have validated it, then you can then navigate the user to another form, to another page. So of course, if the form is not post, then it will come here and render the result. So of course, let me just return at this point if the form is post, so that it will not. Of course, I still want to render the still want it to render the form. So let me just save, and I come back to the contact us form. So if I put in my name again and I submit, of course you see that the post was successful. Now if I come in here, you see that I have the name in the console. So that means the form, this is getting the value from the form, which is the request.post, and the key of that dictionary, which is the full name or the name of our input feed, of the name of our input feed.